Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to Lost in the Wasteland, my weekly interview show where I learn a little bit more about somebody else's perspective on movies. And my guest this week, somebody that I spend a lot of time talking about movies with, my buddy, my co-host, and fellow film reviewer, Rowan Wood. Rowan, thank you so much for coming on.
Always.
One of the best lines in the history of film, right there. But Rowan, let's get things started. What's your favorite movie scene?
So for a lot of the questions today, I have a couple different answers because it's practically impossible to just have one for a lot of these. But a couple ones that I had here were the scene from Crazy Stupid Love when everything comes together. That's just so perfect, and
Yes.
it kind of comes out of nowhere, but it makes perfect sense. Um, the scene from Titanic where the ship is sinking and we get the little like short vignettes and scenes of people dealing with that in different ways, and the
Mhm.
band starts playing that. It brings a tear to my eye every time.
Yeah.
Um, the first Smog scene from Desolation of Smog when Bilbo is trying to find the Arkenstone and talking with Smog and interacting with the dragon, that just scratches every fantasy itch that I have. Um, Battle of Hogwarts is great, even though that's half the movie.
Yeah.
The therapy scene from the end of Rocket Man, where Elton is sort of confronting the different versions of him and the different people from his life. And like any scene from Back to the Future, I could watch on its own and just absolutely lose my shit over. I love that movie.
A lot of winners there. Honestly,
Exactly.
the reason Desolation of Smaug is my favorite of the three Hobbit movies is because of that whole entire segment
Totally.
with
Yeah.
Smaug in it.
Yeah. It's
And
absolutely fantastic.
that crazy stupid love reveal sequence is peak comedy right there. That's
Yes.
just so perfect.
It
And
like not to say that the rest of the movie is not good, but it all feels a lot more earned once that scene happens.
yeah, when it all comes together and you're just like, wow, this has just been a giant web all weaving right in front of our faces. And then, of course, honestly, the whole entire, almost the whole entire movie of Deathly Hallows Part 2, which
Mhm.
is very specifically Snape.
Exactly.
It
Yeah.
gets me every time. Every time.
Yeah.
Now, Snape's one of those characters somewhere in the middle for most of the experience watching Harry Potter. But let's think about your favorite protagonist. Rowan, who's your favorite movie protagonist?
Again, like too many answers, too many options. Um, Jack Skellington, I think, is great, especially because he's so simple and his
Mhm.
motivations are so clear. And you root for him on the very basic merit of his first song. Like he says everything that he's thinking and feeling, and you sympathize with him pretty much
Yep.
instantly. Marty McFly is fantastic. Bilbo Baggins. I actually prefer Bilbo to Frodo. I like as a protagonist because I think Bilbo is a lot more character development, like an actual arc.
Well, that's
My
because Sam's the protagonist.
Exactly. My pick for a Lord of the Rings protagonist would be Aragorn because I think he
Yep.
has a much more dynamic range
Mhm.
of story. Harry Potter, of course. How can I not? Han Solo, Luke
Yep.
Skywalker, like everyone from Harry Potter and Star Wars, I would throw into the ring. Indiana Jones, of course. Danny Torrance, specifically from Doctor Sleep. I think that is
Yes.
one of the most interesting character journeys I've ever seen. Maybe that's been enhanced by me reading the book beforehand, and having that background. Um, but also to give name some more recent examples, I love Evelyn Wang from Everything Everywhere All at Once, and Niles from Palm Springs. Andy Samberg, I think he is just a perfect character because when we get time loop movies, we don't often have someone who is currently in the time loop to provide guidance to our main character. And well, like at least I think we did Edge of Tomorrow. It's been a while since I've seen that, but
Yeah.
Emily Blunt is also in the loop, right?
She
She
was.
was, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but I think that that Niles from Palm Springs, he's a very unique viewpoint
Mhm.
on that angle. So yeah, I love him. I think he's great.
A lot of fun ones, very obviously. How about flipping that coin? How about those antagonists?
I hate to say that my answers are gonna be basic and classic, but they're basic and classic because they're great. Vader, Voldemort, Freddy Krueger, Pennywise, Thanos, like all of the, some of the greatest villains of all time. I noticed I skewed more fantastical villains,
Mm,
because I think I just find those more interesting when there's less rules as to what they can do. Because Pennywise and Freddy Krueger, especially, like they could do basically whatever they want and it wouldn't
yep,
make sense with their characters. And also they are scary. And when a villain can actually scare me, like that is something really, really, um, that's something pretty notable. But also, uh, bringing it back around to Doctor Sleep, I love the True Knot from that movie. I think they are genuinely also very scary.
yes,
And the fact that that their whole motivation is just murder children to get their shine is terrifying because it's like they have absolutely no redeeming qualities. They are just child murderers. That is it. And they just want to live as long as possible.
yep. Rose the
Yeah.
Hat.
Yep.
Rose the Hat. Now, I always believe the hardest thing for a movie to do is stick its landing
Mhm.
and give a satisfying ending because you just told a big story and you have to figure out how you're going to bring it all together. What's your favorite movie ending, Rowan?
I've talked about this movie so many times in so many different places, but Cabin in the Woods, I just think
Mhm.
has a perfect ending. That is the only ending it could have had, and the very reason why it can never have a sequel. Because it ties the knot on the genre subversion that it um that it basically not necessarily pioneered, but modernized in just an absolutely perfect way. And I don't think that there was any other way this movie could have ended, and I think it took exactly the right path in doing so.
Movie's so crazy.
Mhm.
And it's so crazy all the way up until the end.
Yeah.
And it just gives you that last shot and just like, what? And leaves you finish watching the movie just kind of in awe of what you just watched. It's so creative and so
Mhm.
crazy. Love it.
Mhm.
Now, Rowan, what's a film that you wish that you could have seen in a theater for the first time?
So you like normally I would name one of my like top movies ever, like Pan's Labyrinth or the Lord of the Rings
Mhm.
movies. I have since seen those in a theater, not for the first time, but
Yep.
I have seen them, so I feel like I can't put that as my answer here. So maybe like a first theatrical experience is something incredibly special, right?
Mhm.
And something like movies that I would love to experience for the very first time in theaters, like knowing nothing about them, like maybe Back to the Future or Empire Strikes Back or like Apocalypse Now, like something that I would have if I was seeing it in the time period that it came out, I would have absolutely no conceivable idea of what this movie could be. And then seeing it, I feel like I would just be blown away because I'm blown away by them now. I can only
Mhm.
imagine seeing them when they came out. I would have been blown away even more so.
Absolutely. Those are some really good examples too.
Mhm.
Now, I watch a lot of documentaries, like a lot of documentaries, and I always thought this is an interesting question because I know not a ton of people watch a ton of documentaries, and I feel like especially people my age, if you ask what documentaries they watch, they're all true crime because
Mhm.
true crime is such a thing. But
Yeah.
Ron, what's a subject matter you would love to see get the documentary treatment?
So there are two things that I have like true real life events that I have been just fascinated by. Both of them involve a very tumultuous filmmaking process. One of them I actually wrote a script about for a screenplay class last year. I didn't actually end up finishing it because we didn't have to for the class, but it's about how the Third Reich sunk a ton of money, the most expensive propaganda film of all time, actually, funds for that into a movie about the Titanic. But it was a German version of the Titanic in which it would paint the the Americans and the British, like the Westerners, as like greedy, evil capitalists. And so their greed was the reason the Titanic sank, and like a German hero would like come out on top and save as many people as possible. This movie does exist. You can find it on YouTube. It is terrible, but it is. I read about. I read up on the production. It is fascinating. The original director was a drunken tyrant on set. He actually went on a rant one day against Hitler's policies, and then he was subsequently um, imprisoned and killed in prison because it was Nazi Germany, and you can't
Yep.
say stuff like that in Nazi Germany. Um, but yeah, so that is one of the, and I feel like that could be like maybe a Jojo Rabbit or Disaster Artist-esque like weird comedy, and like of course a very dark comedy.
Yep.
But also there is a movie that made by a Chinese billionaire that has still not been released. It is called Empires of the Deep. It is a very strange, like there's a very strange, it's like a very strange Greek mythology mashup, sort of like a Clash of the Titans thing. There's a podcast called It Was a Shit Show that did a fantastic episode about this movie, and there's an article with interviews with nearly everyone involved that is so fascinating. So look it up, Empires of the Deep. Just absolutely like maybe the craziest film production stories I've heard of a movie that has never been released and will probably never be released. Basically, this Chinese billionaire or this real estate billionaire wanted to make a Hollywood movie, but he had no idea how to do it, and he would not budge on anything or not accept input from really anyone, despite wanting to emulate Hollywood as much as he could. And it is crazy. I don't want to say more for fear
Uh,
of spoiling the experience of reading about it or listening to a podcast about it, but it is wild. So definitely check that out if you can.
those both sound like some crazy stories, and I was half expecting you to say that the iceberg was Jewish, because I wouldn't put it past them. You just
Yeah.
they're just like sailing up to the iceberg and just has a giant Star of David on it, and just like you gotta be shitting me. I wouldn't put it past a Nazi propaganda film to do something that freaking stupid. But
Yeah.
anyway, because a lot of propaganda is stupid. But now this is interesting. I'm asking questions about TV instead of movies. So
What?
what? Shifting gears for a couple of questions. But Rowan, what's your favorite television show?
Mhm. So I have flip-flopped about this between
Mm,
a couple shows. So we did an episode of our podcast called Rowan in the Wasteland for our 1 year anniversary. We talked about our favorite shows.
yeah.
And I don't remember what I said for that one, but right now I'm in the middle of a Doctor Who rewatch with my
Uh-huh.
partner Davis, and it is I am being constantly reminded on this rewatch why I love it and how amazing it is. And of course, a lot of this is nostalgia based. Specifically, this is the 2005 revival of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
But it just scratches that very specific nostalgia and sci-fi fantasy itch. It's like the perfect confluence of both of those, and it just makes me so happy to
Mhm.
watch and sort of not just flashback to where I to like when I was watching it when I was younger, but also I'm seeing a lot of these things in a new light now that I'm watching them like years and years later. So
Have
Doctor Who for
you
sure.
have you been watching all the specials that have been coming out on Disney
Oh
Plus?
yes, it has been an event for me.
Because I tried to do the undertaking of going through all the original Doctor Who.
I'm working my way through that now. I'm trying to watch an episode a day. It will take me years and years and years to get through it. But it's such a different show, especially like comparatively to what the show is now.
Well, yeah, because like I can't even remember where I stopped, to be perfectly honest. But there's seasons that are almost completely lost,
Mhm.
and it's all on BritBox. So shameless plug
There's
for
a
BritBox.
so what I've been doing for the lost episodes is there's a like a project called Loose Cannon Reconstructions,
Hmm.
and they reconstruct all of the lost episodes in like with production photos or like because they have all the audio, they just
Yeah.
don't have the visual. So they reconstruct it with production photos and stills that they have that still exist. And so it's, I mean, like of course it's the closest we can get to actually watching those episodes, but BritBox doesn't have any of the existing episodes of stories that are partially lost. So like
Mhm.
I find those on like Dailymotion or something,
Yeah,
which exist. They're just not in the best quality, but that's like the only place to watch them.
it's the only
So
opportunity to do it.
exactly.
And I have certainly seen plenty of Neil Patrick Harris lately popping
Mhm.
up all over TikTok
Yeah. Well, that's
because
all right then.
oh my God, him dancing in that
Yeah.
scene is
Yeah.
so ridiculous and fun. I loved it. I'm half tempted to watch some of them just because, like, I've watched some episodes with Chris Eccleston and David Tennant in them,
Mhm.
and my brother's a huge, like, loves the new Doctor Who and loves David Tennant. So I'm gonna be like, "Have you been watching these?"
Yeah.
And I am sure he was super super excited to have him back.
Mhm.
So as were a lot of
Yeah.
people.
For
Now,
for for a few episodes at the very
yeah.
least.
Now, what's your favorite television finale?
Now, I meant to ask you a clarifying question. Is this finale for a season or finale for
I meant like
a series overall?
finale,
Right, right,
like
right.
end of a
Series
show.
finale. Okay, good,
Yep.
because that's how I structured my answer.
There you go.
Um, so I went with Breaking Bad because I feel like it is hard to deny that it is one of the best finales that
Mhm.
actually does stick the landing, no matter what you feel about the show overall. Um, but like it's such a cliche answer, but it's so true. Recently, Barry and Brooklyn Nine-Nine also stuck the landing in such a way that I was not expecting them to, because
Mm.
those are shows that ending them would seem to be such a daunting task and virtually impossible to do in exactly the right way, and somehow they did do it perfectly. And I am still in shock that they did manage to do it that well. And like I have respect for everyone behind the scenes that clearly put a lot of work into working to that point of being
Yeah.
able to end perfectly.
Okay, earlier this year was crazy because within a week, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Barry, Succession,
Mhm.
and Ted Lasso all ended. It felt like an ending.
Yeah,
Um, if they bring it back, they bring it back, but it felt like a series finale.
yeah.
But it was bold and like them wrapping up all of that in a time. And then I know personally, I'm going through it a bit right now because Archer just ended
Mhm.
after 14 seasons and Letterkenny's ending after 12. And I'm going to be very
Wow.
sad because there's a lot of laughs that were packed into that. And then they hurt me when they announced that What We Do in the Shadows is ending with this
I
next.
know, I know.
FX is
That
doing a
that
fire
one,
sale.
yeah, that one hit me a little bit.
Well, because like Reservation Dogs ended this year too. There's been a lot of things that have ended, but it's so hard to stick a landing. And I definitely respect, obviously, Breaking Bad really did it well. I thought Better Call Saul did too. Both of those shows
Yes.
are amazing. So
Mhm.
good. Now, shifting back a little bit. Now, imagine your life's getting turned into a movie.
Mhm.
What director do you feel like would be the best director to direct your story?
I have a few options here. Like just incredibly different vibes, like the most different possible vibes. The first one I had written down is Craig Gillespie, who
Nice.
specializes in movies with ensemble casts, colorful characters, weird, wacky comedy, like so many different people in these movies. And I feel like that's kind of what my life has been, especially in high school and college, just so many different people kind of coming and going and like and then coming back. Um and I feel like especially in high school, I was surrounded by just so many goofy people, and I feel like Craig Gillespie is the person that could theoretically bring all of those like different vibes all together into one story. And then since my life isn't very interesting, I kind of just sit around and watch movies and take walks a lot and think about stuff. I feel like Wim Wenders or David Lean could make sort of an engaging like slice of life movie um, in this sense. And also, since I love to daydream and live in my own fantasy worlds, I feel like Fellini could also make sort of like a fun, grounded fantasy in terms of, how I see the world sometimes when I'm imagining other things. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like those are just so many different answers across the
Yeah.
board.
I guess it really depends on how you want your story to be told. And there's
Exactly.
definitely some interesting choices there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, Rowan, my last question for you is, what
Mhm.
are 5 films you would recommend to people that were made before you were born?
Here's the thing. I was born in 2002, so most
Yes.
movies, like statistically, were made before excuse me, were made before I was born. So I chose five um from like very different decades and eras in
Okay.
film history that I feel like would give a very different and very wide-ranging understanding of film as a medium and why and like what I love about film. And so there's 10 Things I Hate About You. We're going in reverse order. 10
Nice.
Things I Hate About You, The Shawshank Redemption, Amadeus, Witness for the Prosecution, and The Kid. So just like classics in their own right, but
Yep.
very different kinds of classics, I
Yep.
think. But all films that I hold very near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a long stretch of time that that list covers, but also a nice
Exactly.
variety of films too,
Hmm. Yeah.
and some absolute classics and some ones that probably people should watch more, and also some fun ones. So
Hmm.
obviously, like Shawshank and Amadeus stand out to me the most.
Of course. Yeah.
It's crazy because I didn't watch Shawshank until college, and I'm like, why have I not watched this movie before now? It was my best friend's favorite movie, and for some reason, I never actually sat down and watched it with him until college, and it was certainly worth the wait. But Roman, you've definitely been on this show enough to know what's coming. I always like to wrap up my show by having my guest ask me a question. So,
Hmm.
what would you like to ask the Wasteland Reviewer?
I would like to ask the Wasteland Reviewer. Um, if so in this in a fantasy world, like a fictional world where you were a filmmaker
Mhm.
and you made something that was so well received that it was up for all of the awards, like the Oscars, the Golden Globes, everything. What kind of movie would you want to make that would like that you would get all of the attention for? So like what is the vision that you would want to share with the world that would cause the spotlight to go onto you?
That's a really interesting question in terms of how you frame that.
Hmm.
And because, like, I've written screenplays, I've imagined them alive in my head from like start to finish. And like the film idea that I had is like it would be some kind of genre film that would transcend its genre
Hmm.
and
Love it.
actually get people to care about a genre film actually winning a bunch of Oscars. So, the likes of Everything Everywhere, or like probably more accurately, Mad Max for me. An action movie that has layers to it and has something to say that's very topical of today and
Hmm.
kind of puts a spotlight back on people and makes them think about, yeah, a lot of people feel this way about certain things and it's really shitty. And you should think about yourselves.
Yeah.
And while also being exhilarating and action filled, because I love action movies, but also being able to tackle the idea of like our society is so violent and like putting that light back on ourselves is like, why do we love violence so much? Why are we so okay with violence so much? And then it's like you can't show a pair of breasts in a movie without people freaking out.
Yeah.
So I feel like it would be that. I obviously have an actual film in mind because I wrote it. But like it's that kind of idea, and I feel like it would have some interesting things to say about society today, the world we live in, but also, genre films are great too, and you should give them some love. Academy. So that's my idea. So hope that answered your question.
Of course.
But Rowan, thank you so much for coming on, as
Of
always.
course. Always. It's been a pleasure.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.